All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, September 10th, 2021. This is your daily tropical update. Well, happy halfway point. That is what we are at in the 2021 hurricane season. September 10th is the climatological peak of the hurricane season, roughly the 10th to the 12th or so, where we typically see the most activity. On the calendar, we, of course, are well beyond the halfway point, but the most of our activity during the hurricane season does fall from mid-August to mid-October. So, right about the halfway point of when we actually get our named storms and such like that, and typically activity falls off a lot in late October and into November. And on the peak of the season today, we do have Hurricane Larry moving up towards Newfoundland. That's going to be a nice strike on them tonight and tomorrow. And we do have two other areas of interest. Invest in the Gulf of Mexico, now with a 70% chance to develop, and a wave leaving Africa with about a 70% chance to develop as well. So we're going to talk about those two. But real quick, we'll take a quick look at where 2021 stands so far this year. This is from Philip Klotzbach on Twitter. He's a hurricane specialist at Colorado State University, does their predictions among other things, and it does a really good job with hurricane factoids. So far in 2021, we've had 13 named storms, with Mindy being the latest. Five of those have become hurricanes, and three have become major hurricanes. And this stacks up at about 150 or so percent, generally 130 to 160% of the average for this point in the season. And if you want to kind of take it further, an average season, 1991 to 2020 on average, has 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. So we're about 2 storms away from basically having a full season in the first half of our season. So it has been a busy one so far, and it does not appear that that's going to slow down all that much. So let's go ahead and take a look at again what we have today. We'll start with Hurricane Larry, 5 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center. Maximum sustained winds 80 miles an hour. The system now blazing to the north-northeast at 35 miles an hour. This will run over again Newfoundland tonight. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for portions of that southern part of the region. A lot of times when these storms get moving really fast, not only do you have the strong winds, I mean Larry again still making hurricane force winds sustained, and those winds are sustained well away from the center, especially on that east side. But also you have the forward speed component, which adds on to the wind when the winds are rotating with the storm. So you can get a pretty nasty punch right here on the edge, or just to the right of where Larry's eye comes through, and tropical storm warnings do extend off to the west. Going to be a nasty strike there. Larry becomes an extra tropical cyclone tonight or tomorrow morning, and his last act will be a big snowfall event for parts of Greenland. So that's pretty cool. A hurricane lasts for about 12 days and then makes a big snowfall event on its way out. Just kind of things that happen in September. The only issue for the eastern U.S. is the rip currents and high swell waves that Larry generated this week, and those will persist through the weekend before they begin to relax. Again, satellite shot, pretty cool looking, but going to be conditions go downhill pretty fast tonight. So, folks up there, hope you're hunkered down and ready for a pretty big hit. All right, let's go and look at the rest of the Atlantic Basin again. We have our two waves here at Hurricane Center maintaining a 70% chance for both these to develop in the next 5 days. We'll start with the Gulf interest and we'll talk about the other one and look at satellite presentation this afternoon. Wave axis for the system located here in the Western Caribbean. Definitely some scattered showers and storms on the north side, but a lot of heavy wind shear from an upper trough. You can see on the water vapor imagery a lot better. See a large upper trough kind of shearing out over the region, and this is causing a lot of the thunderstorm activity to remain very disjointed. But what you do have still is a surface trough somewhere in here, and you have the tropical wave moving in. So these two are expected to kind of become one big entity here in the southern Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche, as it's called, in a couple days, likely on Sunday or Monday, when we expect some tropical development to begin, i.e., a tropical depression or a tropical storm likely to form sometime Sunday or Monday in this region and move generally northward. Now, models do disagree about how this evolution looks. The GFS model, for example, has the focus of the activity well south down here, and brings a weak tropical storm or tropical depression into northern Mexico and kind of landfalls south of Texas. So Texas and Louisiana is still on the moist side of that, but doesn't really generate a significant storm. It just has kind of a rain event for the region. European model sees a different solution. They have it has a system forming a little bit further north and offshore. Notice how the GFS is all the way down here. The Europeans a bit further north and a little bit further offshore on Sunday, with that vortex kind of getting started, tropical development getting started started on Sunday, and then Monday has a bit more organized storm moving right in close to Brownsville in southern Texas, but it has it kind of turning up the coast and sort of staying as some kind of coherent vortex up until landfall somewhere around Corpus Christi or even into Houston, somewhere in eastern Texas, and then has a very slow moving storm even into Wednesday. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday kind of just wandering through this region and producing a lot of very heavy rainfall. And European at least leans to a bit more of an organized storm. Now, the overall environment for this is going to be somewhat marginal. The steering flow generally going to be weak. High pressure is kind of centered over the Gulf of Mexico by Tuesday. It has this kind of somewhat southerly flow, but it's not going to be very strong. So whatever does form is not going to be in a terrible hurry to move up the coast and move clockwise, around this weak high pressure ridge. But upper level winds should be marginally favorable. Right now, there is, again, that strong upper trough kind of digging through there, shearing the storms and keeping things unfavorable. As we go into the weekend, that trough quickly lifts out of the area and is replaced by a building upper level high over Central America. And this will gradually retrograde and move northward throughout the next few days. And by Monday, you have this upper high over right where our little low pressure is going to likely be trying to develop somewhere, in this region. And you're going to have some lighter upper winds, it appears. So wind shear may not be the biggest problem for this system, at least in the upper levels. Mid levels, again, at like 700 millibars, you may have some, issues with kind of a southwest wind shear, but or southeast wind shear, but it's not going to be too significant. And it looks like, plenty of warm water in this region this time of year. Marginally favorable wind shear could allow for some sort of storm to develop into the next couple of days. Now, the question really becomes the rainfall, because that's the biggest threat. Now, we may have a wind component if conditions really sort out and we get one of those quick fire tropical storms. Mindy just a few days ago tried to make a run right before she made landfall, and she had another 12 hours, would have made a run well into tropical storm. So I think, like, low grade hurricane isn't off the table. I mean, we're not talking like an Ida situation or something. It's not picture perfect by any means, but I would say that most likely is maybe a strong tropical storm. The possibilities range from a weak, just nothing into Mexico, all the way up to category 1 or 2 hurricane possible. This is, phase 3 of the MJO. You have that potential. But regardless of the wind component shows up or not, a rainfall component is going to be there. You're going to have a lot of precipitable water. GFS shows us here Sunday. Right now, there's a lot of drier air over this part of the U.S. And what's going to happen is a lot of tropical moisture surges back in by Monday. So whether there is a tropical storm here or not, again, the GFS shows that weak vortex in Mexico, but you could have a stronger vortex, stronger storm here. A lot of tropical moisture is going to start streaming into Texas and Louisiana, especially western Louisiana, through the middle of the week. And this really continues Thursday into Friday. You can see the anomalously, wet region in a strong, deep tropical flow pushing into Texas and Louisiana. So if there's something here spinning and kind of pushing that along, you're going to get a lot of rainfall. And rainfall totals do depend on how and what forms and where it goes. The European that has the stronger storm does have heavier rainfall. Again, it looks like a lot of rainfall, 8 to 12 inches coming for a large swath from Houston and Corpus Christi all the way up into western Louisiana, Lake Charles, and that sort of area, eastern Texas. And some of these spots are well over 12 inches in places. So definitely a lot of rainfall expected by the European operational. Weather Prediction Center, not really going overboard, but still showing a wide swath. Anywhere in this brown, you can expect over 8 inches of rain. Again, this does include Houston Metro, where a significant flood threat remains, possible going into next week, and this is valid through Thursday. GFS kind of showing you the same thing. Really, GFS has lower totals because they have the much weaker vortex, much weaker storm. But even with the weaker storm, you can see a lot of rainfall still coming in some spots, especially could be looking at rainfall totals closer to a foot. So even in the best scenario for the actual named storm, a lot of rainfall coming for Texas and Louisiana this week. Not great news for folks in eastern Louisiana still recovering from Hurricane Ida. Still 190,000 people without power this morning. And hopefully that number goes down a lot, because there's going to be a lot of rainfall coming for this whole region into this coming week. And if an actual organized named storm develops, we could be talking about a little bit more than that. Ensemble models also pick up on it pretty well. European ensembles obviously a little bit more bullish on it. They're really expecting something to form, generally weak, but are showing something on most of their members. GFS members aren't as many showing as many members developing the storm, but some do develop it, but they generally lean more south and west, where the European is a little more north and east with its members. So some uncertainty remains. And again, this is one of those, until we get a vortex, we don't really know what exactly we are looking at. But it remains to be seen, and there is a very good chance that something develops going into late Sunday or early next week. All right, so real quick on the other piece, the system over the African coast, over the Cabo Verde Islands, definitely looks like it's going to develop. Now, how strong it gets remains to be seen. Models really aren't buying a whole lot with that one. And GFS, our European ensembles, have a weak storm moving over the Cabo Verde Islands and sort of dissipating. GFS has kind of the same thing, but the system kind of recurves back down to the south and holds on and stays kind of organized into next week. And we'll have to see on that whether that becomes a wave that stays dominant and either just recurves or dissipates, or if it actually moves south and is able to get towards the Antilles by next week. And then the European thinks another stronger wave is going to come off of Africa with a better chance to develop. So we'll see. One of the issues we have is in the extended outlook, European weekly ensembles do show anomalous ridging over Canada as we work into the next about 7 to 10 days, and this is going to push more storms to the south. So the one more good two about week period where we can see some longer track storms from Africa move across and get back into the Caribbean. For a while, they've been turning northward like Larry and the ones that formed while Ida was forming, all kind of recurved. And then now we're going to get back to storms that may be able to sneak into the Caribbean. And then, of course, if they get here, they do threaten the eastern U.S. Finally, we are tracking this little wave here in the central Atlantic, not highlighted on the Hurricane Center's map, but towards the middle of next week, models do continue to show this moving near the Bahamas, a little trough right here. Could develop into something. Models kind of take some into North Carolina, some into Florida, some wherever, but anything developing in this time here with high pressure to the north, that's going to be pushing it towards the U.S. So could just be a weak rainmaker, could be nothing to it, but storms around the Bahamas this time of the year really need to be watched, especially in Florida, because things can change pretty quick. Way too early to make any calls. Just know it's out there. It's going to be coming up next week, in addition to the Gulf Coast storm, which is going to be dumping a bunch of rain, and whatever's developing off Africa. This could also be on our radar as well. And again, no outlets are officially pushing it right now. I'm just telling you, keep an eye on it because things could change. Real quick, we'll run across the rest of the tropics. Olaf made landfall in the eastern Pacific along the southern Baja Peninsula as a Category 2 hurricane last night. Pretty nasty hit there. It has since turned away from land, moving away, expected to dissipate over the weekend, and tropical storm warnings likely to be dropped soon. And in the Western Pacific, we have the second half of the Indian Ocean cyclone season getting started with an invest that are watching over there. Their season runs until, from about late May to early June. Then it shuts down for the summer monsoon. But then this time of year it relaxes, and then you can get some more tropical storms. Over in the Western Pacific, we have an invest to watch, as well as a tropical storm moving into Vietnam tomorrow, and Super Typhoon Shanthu stealing the show. A very, very impressive Category 5 Super Typhoon moving away from the Philippines after a near miss of the northern Philippines. Good news for there. The core of the strongest winds did stay offshore. The small storm, outrageously powerful though. Dvorak numbers are 7.5, which is indicating a system of 155 knots or 180 miles an hour with that central pressure out there, estimated to be around 879 millibars. A very, very intense hurricane, among the most intense we would see in the Atlantic Basin at any time. But the Western Pacific is known for this sort of thing. Shanthu, again, 155 knots right now. Wind gusts well over 200 miles an hour and expected to only slowly weaken. Now, the good news is the forecast comes a little more directly over Taiwan, and they've shifted just maybe offshore. So hopefully, if those trends continue, the system can recurve just offshore of Taiwan, but we can't guarantee that. And a very, very powerful Category 4, possibly Category 5 storm could directly impact Taiwan and really impact the entire country over the next few days. And that could definitely be bad news. It looks like this is going to landfall tomorrow night, or be very close to landfalling tomorrow night, and then moves northward and does again threaten much of Japan, South Korea, and China early next week. So a storm that's going to be winding down, hopefully, but is still a very big threat to those in the region. And unless it weakens soon, a very strong typhoon coming for this area. So that's what I got for you today, guys. A lot going on, but overall, again, big flooding threat next week for Louisiana and Texas, especially western Louisiana and eastern Texas. They need to be getting ready for that and getting prepared for that. Could be something stronger. We're not sure. Larry moves away out of the picture. We got a long time to watch all this nonsense, and we're going to keep our eye on this little wave right here, but it's the peak of the season, and we got a lot of hurricane season left to go. So until then, stay safe. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.